Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and welcome to How to Price for Profit with Katy Baker. My name is Colin Mahan, and I'm a program manager at the Nasdaq Entrepreneurial Center. And for those of you who may not know, the Nasdaq Center is a nonprofit that's building a better path for entrepreneurs worldwide by improving inclusion, access, and knowledge in entrepreneurship. As you may have just seen in the chat, the Nasdaq Entrepreneurial Center, along with our partner Mentor Club, launched a free mentor matching platform for entrepreneurs called Mentor Makers. You can create your own advisory board to guide and inspire you with in-the-moment mentorship from topic experts and professionals dedicated to providing exceptional mentorship to entrepreneurs across all races, industries, and geographies. So find or become a mentor today by using the link in the chat. Mentorship matters to all entrepreneurs. Their success is dependent on it. Quick housekeeping item. We're going to open up for live Q&A at the end of the event. So please submit your questions for us in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen throughout the presentation. Now, none of what we do here at the center could be possible without all the amazing support from our sponsors, including Nasdaq, Lehigh University, Bank of the West, KPMG, Wilson Sonsini, Woodruff Sawyer, and BPM. We're grateful and humbled by their contributions. During these still unique times, we're curious on how sentiment is among the entrepreneurs that we work with. So I'm going to start by just taking a quick poll to just let us know how you're feeling about your business right now. We've been measuring this since the beginning of the digital transformation. And hopefully optimism's on the rise, but understand that there's some anxiety, some survival mode, and a little bit of fear out there. So appreciate you all participating in this poll, but I don't want to delay too much to get into the content we have today. All right, I'm going to end this poll, share those results. Looks like optimism's on the rise, but totally understand there's a little bit of survival mode and some anxiety out there. So hopefully our presentation today will help alleviate some of those sentiments. So without any further delay, please join me in giving a warm welcome in the chat to our special guest, Katy Baker, Pricing for Profit Consultant, CPA CMA. Katy, welcome.
Thank you so much, Colin. Thank you.
Looking forward to learning. Over to you.
Yeah, okay, I'm gonna share my screen. Okay, you can all see the big pencil there?
Looks great.
Okay. Just minimize my Zoom. Okay, hello, and thank you so much for attending this webinar. Again, I am Katy Baker, and I am coming to you today from Treaty 13, now known as Toronto in the province of Ontario. A few right turns up north from you, and this land I'm on is part of the Dish with One Spoon territory. So let me tell you, it's an absolute thrill to be here and to talk about my passion, pricing for profit. And thank you for trusting me to guide you through this process, because as an entrepreneur myself, and having worked with many, many entrepreneurs, I know that determining the best price for your product or service can be a real struggle. And fair enough, it is not straightforward. There are many factors, both financial and marketing, to consider. That said, we won't be able to cover every pricing eventuality in this webinar. We simply don't have enough time, and the topic sees many, many nuances, but I'll do my best to cover what I consider to be the key financial implications around pricing, with a nod to the fact that pricing is, in fact, one of the 4 Ps of marketing. First up, an overview agenda and what this webinar will entail. Understanding the value of time and how it becomes an integral part of your profitability equation. Accommodating personal expenses in your overhead and pricing profile, and potentially incorporating a healthy tax savings as well. Ensuring you are profitable means that your price needs to cover all of your expenses and include a budgeted profit margin. And there will be advice around creating your revenue roadmap to ensure you earn your profitability targets. And finally, a word on the importance of you learning to direct and not depend on your accountant. So it might be an assumption, but I'm going to take a guess that by virtue of your attendance here today, that you went into business at least partially to make a profit? Because making a profit enables your business and your entrepreneurial dreams to grow. Yes? That said, I absolutely recognize there are many entrepreneurs who start their business based off a very personal passion, just like I did. Maybe you created a key service, an app, a platform, or you knew you had a business model that could truly help people. And that is so admirable. So I do understand that profit may not always be the number one motive. Nevertheless, every entrepreneur, even me, needs to determine a fair and equitable price for their work, regardless. And we know that profit helps businesses grow. And in the same breath, we know that expenses exist. So how do you as an entrepreneur ensure you're covering both profit and expenses? Our revenue, hence our first formula. Your revenue will equal your profit plus your expenses. Solving for the pricing equation requires the consideration of one of our most valuable resources, which is time, namely your time. It is, in fact, a key common denominator in determining your business's pricing. And I will let you decide how much you want to dedicate to your business. But know one thing for sure, 100% of your time will almost never be in front of a client earning money. I'm just going to repeat that. 100% of your time will almost never be in front of the client earning money. And maybe you do know that. Even as a solopreneur, especially as a solopreneur, because if you're serious about creating a successful, robust business, you are doing and building a lot of ingenuity. And by that, I mean you're planning, purchasing, networking, blogging, posting, researching, testing, tracking, hiring, developing, and that's just Monday morning. So for the sake of ease, let's map this out. Let's say half your 40-hour work week is doing and building, and the other half is spent with clients making money. And if you extend that out to a year, that equals 2,000 hours per year. That's 50 weeks times 40 hours a week, with 2 weeks set aside for vacation. Again, for the purposes of this exercise, let's strategize that you're doing 20 hours or half your work week, and the other 20 hours are focused on earning money. And feel free to write this down. Kind of map and visualize what this would actually look like in your business. Keywords: doing, earning. So we're looking at 1,000 hours a year of doing again, and 1,000 hours of earning. Let's pause here just for a minute and I'll ask you, how much do you want to earn in your business this year? And we're leaving tax out of the equation just for now, just whole numbers here. I invite you actually to write it down. For the purposes of this webinar, I'm going to use 200,000 as the desired earnings from the business for this year. Again, please write your earning goals down and follow the formula. And the formula is that given that we allocated 1,000 hours to earn money, working with our clients, then the division would be 200,000 divided by 1,000 equals 200 an hour. Or let's say you're a producer or manufacturer with the same earnings goal of 200,000, and you know that your business has the capacity to produce 4,000 items or units per year. The division there would be 200,000 by 4,000 units and $50 a unit. But I don't have to tell you that this is just a very basic way to establish a price. Because if you leave your pricing here, you'll have a very shallow pricing profile that won't represent the profit and expenses you have, plus your salary. Let's look how this might play out in real life. Examples are always easier to follow. So I have a client, Morgan, who runs a service-based consultancy business as a fractional CMO, meaning Morgan is a fractional hired on contract to work with clients as their chief marketing officer. Morgan's work involves a powerful combination of technical and marketing savvy within the overall deliverable that truly changes the trajectory of growth significantly upwards for clients. She has powerful testimonials, let me assure you. For that reason, Morgan can't realistically dedicate any more than 20 hours per week in client-facing time because the other 20 is jam-packed managing staff, negotiating with various contractors, as well as creating a lot of powerful strategy. Morgan has budgeted earning an annual salary of $200,000 from the business, and yet Morgan's price is $450 an hour, which there is no trouble getting. $450 and not $200, yes, because there's overhead and profit margin to be covered as well. So now let's look at the expenses or the inputs that fall under overhead and profit margins. First up, incorporating your personal expenses into your business overhead. And maybe, depending on the tax laws in your region, you can use this as a significant tax deduction as well. Lots of reasons to calculate it. The great thing about being an entrepreneur as opposed to an employee is that you can incorporate personal expenses into your business, something that is generally not possible as an employee. And again, there may be tax savings here as well. A good reason not to leave this potential for money in your pocket on the table. So let's start with calculating your home office and vehicle. And if you rent an external office space and have a dedicated vehicle for the business, or you have no vehicle at all, please stick with me. The nitty-gritty of these expense calculations involves accessing a muscle in your brain I want to coach and encourage you to build for your business. The task of incorporating your personal home office expense into your business is relatively straightforward, and it begins with a measuring tape. Measure the total livable square footage in your home, and this works for a condo too. For easy math in this equation, let's say your home is a total of 2,000 square feet. Now measure the square footage of your office space. Let's say it's 300 square feet. Divide the office square footage by your home's total square footage, 300 over 2,000, and you'll get a percentage. In this case, it's 15%. This is the percentage of all of your home's expenses that you can now claim within your business. Caveat number one, depending on your jurisdiction, your mortgage versus your rent versus your mortgage interest, some portions of those may also be included as a tax deduction, but do look up your regional tax regulations, or again, check with your accountant. But the total of all expenses, such as utilities, internet, hydro, maintenance, and repairs, times the percentage of your home office, 15%, is a percentage you can recapture on your business overhead. In addition, I encourage you to go further, adding all the other common areas such as hall, kitchen, bathroom you use during your workday. Divide that total by your house's total and get a percentage. Let's say it's another 15%. And then multiply that by 0.23. I know this is getting calculated, but it's important because you want it to be accurate. 23% is your 2,000 annual working hours divided by all the hours in a year, which are 8,760. So that gives you a very accurate percentage of usage during working hours. In this case, we've said 15% for common areas times 23% equals 3.5%. Add that 3.5% to the home office 15, and yes, it's incremental, but in business, every penny counts. Now you can attribute 18.5% of all your home's expenses to your business's overhead. Caveat number two. I 100% encourage you to use these totals to make these calculations, and this will be shared with you so you can have the calculations in your toolkit. Whether or not you can use them or some or all as allowable tax deduction is really dependent on your jurisdiction. So something, again, accountant can advise, And if you use it, and if it can be used, it is a very nice tax deduction. If the vehicle you own is used for both personal and business, even incrementally, then you'll want to calculate and assign all of the business associated expenses to your business. And for this equation, I'll use averages. I do encourage, if you're going to do this, to run, take a certain amount of time in a month or two and do calculate the average usage. But if industry averages work for you and you feel comfortable with them, then I'm going to share some with you here. The average motorist drives somewhere around 13,000 miles a year. And I know you probably remember what you paid for your car and what you what it costs to keep the gas tank full, but simply spitballing the true annual cost isn't enough. So research always being your friend in business, from a AAA report based on annual data collected across 9 different new vehicle categories, here are a few metric highlights that might help you from their latest study that you might consider when calculating your own vehicle's expense. Fuel costs on average are 11.6 cents per mile, maintenance on top 9 cents per mile, total expenditure 20.6 cents a mile times 13,000 miles is $4,463 in fuel and maintenance costs per year on average. That's a little chunk of change. That's a really, really nice vacation somewhere. Annual average insurance costs, another $1,200. Then add on licensing, registration, tax, depending on your jurisdiction, maybe $700. We've now almost at $5,663. Then you want to add on the financing and leasing costs. We haven't even talked about that, which are also all allowable, some between $400 and upwards to $800 a month. So even if you only use your vehicle 20% of the time, a modest contribution or allocation to your business could be upwards of $2,500 a year. A significant chunk of an allowable expense to be recouped within your business and your pricing. And again, depending on your jurisdiction, potentially a decent tax deduction. Because let's say you do earn that $200,000, and I believe you will. That's a little chunk of tax you're going to pay. So every deduction that you can incorporate puts money in your pocket, your business's pocket. Let's move on to usual expenses. We did a deep dive into home and vehicle, but let's look at usual expenses. Here's a sample list of all those expenses. And just to assure and familiarize you, any one of these headings will describe the same set. You might call them your business's overhead, their operational overhead, fixed costs, cost of doing business. They mean the same thing, because a key point here is whether you have 1 client or 100 clients, or you produce 4 or 4,000 units in your business. Overhead, these things, they are fixed. It doesn't change regardless. And so it must be recovered within your pricing, or you will not be profitable. If you have costs that change or are variable based on client project work or the products you produce, then those get included in cost of goods sold and are quite separate from your fixed overhead costs, and we will look at those. But for now, we're focusing on the fixed costs. 1 client, 100 clients. 4 products, 4,000. These costs don't change. I have never worked with an entrepreneur who has been able to tell me their overhead amount per service delivery hour or per unit produced as X. Most have never quantified it. That's why I do this work. Here is a lot of numbers. It's actually an Excel snapshot of our sample client Morgan's overhead expenses. We're just going to look at them quickly because I know it's a bit of a blur. We're starting from the top, the business use of home and vehicle, check, check. And in the pricing profile workbook we created together, these are separate spreadsheets, and the totals link via formula to the business's overhead spreadsheet, making it really easy to adjust or update as needed. And I know this is a comprehensive list of expenses. Some you're thinking, wow, that's high. Don't get too caught up in what it represents or what's presented, but know that all of these expenses make Morgan's business the success it is. And all of them are incorporated into the pricing. Morgan does not compromise on shortchanging the business or themselves, and you should not either. And yet you may be asking, okay, should my overhead expense line items look like these? And my answer is yes and no. So expenses that make you and your business stronger, you might have certainly thought about them, but what would that look like if I put them in my business? So things like education, professional development, charitable giving, vacation, retirement, your medical insurance. And you can decide what's best for your business. But these are all things that you could consider investing in, as all of them will make your business better and stronger because they'll make you better and stronger. And if you were working for someone else, these would usually be covered on your behalf. So don't shortchange yourself. But the most important thing, I delve into this set of expenses, we can take any other set that's on your overhead, is that you understand what your expense line item investments represent. So when reviewing, you very clearly understand them all. You spent good money on them. Keep track of them. Which leads me to a very small, maybe not so small, but sad fact. Mistakes are a part of being human. Everybody makes them, and yes, your accountant may make them too. So you have to be as familiar as possible with all your expenses so you can easily spot any potential errors, because errors are costly and they will erode your profit. Okay, so maybe in the early days, weeks, months of being an entrepreneur, you decide you will be lean, and that's fair. Making sure that you're spending on what leverages the biggest and fastest returns so that you are able to pay your bills on time and yourself, at the very least, a nominal salary, and reinvest in your business's growth. The beauty of creating your own pricing profile is that once you know all the numbers, you can play around with adding and adjusting where and when makes the most sense. Again, my cautionary tale, do not shortchange yourself or your business. Don't race to the market by lowballing the competition in spite of yourself, unless that is a very strategic and specific, well thought out marketing and financially planned strategy and decision. Yes, you can plan for losses as part of your entrance to market strategy, but plan it. Know exactly incrementally what you are losing, and what you absolutely don't want is a year-end surprise of massive losses. This will erode faith in your own business personally. It will erode faith in your family, in your investors, in your customers. So know your numbers. And if it's going to be a loss to enter the market, you know that you've planned it. Here's a scaled down version of Morgan's expenses that might more closely represent an early stage entrepreneur's overhead. The total overhead here is $61,902. For this pricing exercise, because we're going to work on a few equations, let's round it up to 62 in overhead per year. So I'm going to walk through two pricing profiles, one for service provider and one for producer or manufacturer. So I'm going to begin with service provider, and we're going to work out the hourly rate. Again, remember, we have overhead of $63,000 a year to address. If we allocate the overhead of $62,000 over the 1,000 hours that we're charging clients for our time, that's an overhead break even of $62 an hour. If that's all you charged, that's all you're going to cover. No salary, no profit. Making sure we get paid for our time and talent, targeted $200,000 annual salary, is an addition of $200 to our price. I don't want to spend too long about how you pick your annual salary, but you're probably well educated. You probably worked really, really hard at building your business. A lot of sweat equity, a lot of time and talent and sacrifices. These have a monetary value. And I've simplified the pricing profile here somewhat, because in some instances, you might want to break down your doing time. You know, those 1,000 hours that you're building. Maybe you're going to pay yourself at a lower rate, but you still have to pay yourself for building your business. And then your client-facing rate, a little more stressful, a little more intense. Maybe you might have a higher rate. But for the sake of this presentation, I'm keeping it simple. And the $200 an hour at 1,000 hours per year is recognizing and rewarding all of your time, all of your efforts, all of your talent that you put into the business that year. So checking in as we go, we have $262 an hour that represents overhead in your salary. Check. Now add in your profit margin. How should you determine that? In early days of being an entrepreneur, you know, it's very fair to be modest. Maybe say 5%. That's $13 per client-facing hour dedicated to growing your business. This profit margin is so important. It's not a rainy day slush fund. It's not a Christmas party or a summer picnic fund. It's your scaling for growth fund. New equipment, new staff hire. Over the course of a year, it will return $13,000 to your business to reinvest or repay debt, whichever turns the needle to growth and security better. This is not, again, a bonus for you or your workers. This is a profit to help your business grow. Okay, so what if you're a producer? You're a maker or manufacturer. Let's jump back to the $62,000 in overhead and assume you have the same overhead. How many products can you produce given your present time and resources allocation? So we've said, let's say 4,000. You're a very talented maker of bespoke products. This is the number you can produce over the course of a year. Pricing begins with dividing first the 62,000 by 4,000 units. Now we know that every unit you make in price has an overhead cost of $15.50 per unit. And now we look at the cost of goods sold. Simplify per item here. Labor, $6 a unit. Materials, $3.50. This wasn't a spitballing. There are templates to break down everything that go into your products. And you know, if you're making a garment, it's the thread, buttons, zippers, hang tags, branding tags, the allocation of shipping of the materials to your factory, et cetera, et cetera. Every penny that went into getting the materials into the product is there. Overhead, $15.50. Your cost, $25. Your wholesale price and margin, $50. You may be asking, how is wholesaling pricing from cost really determined? That's a good question. First up, let's kind of qualify what is wholesaling. It's a B2B business model with a focus on producing large volumes of product which are sold in bulk to other businesses. The standard markup in many and maybe most manufacturing settings that I'm familiar with, and I have worked with, but you know, by far not them all, is cost times 2 or 100% markup. That said, research your industry. Determine if your cost times a markup of 100% or times 2 is a viable price point for your buyer. You need to know this as the maker. because if they'll also be marking it up to retail it. The whole retailing end you haven't been involved in. You have focused on producing large volumes of product, which are sold in bulk to a buyer who then has to spend money to retail the product. So they're going to mark it up again, usually by 2. Now that you know the retail price may be 4 times your cost, you can turn to research. Will there be a market for your product at $100? Maybe there's a market for it at $200, and maybe only at $75. If the latter is the case, can you tweak your costs? This is where the fun really begins in pricing. Can efficiencies be found within the labor? Again, the materials. Can overhead be reduced? These are elements that go into refining your pricing. Don't simply strip away costs to meet the market price. Tweak, refine, and become more efficient. That is your challenge. How to trim costs to add value to protect your profits. A good place to start is ensuring your labor costs are accurate. And it may be paying your staff by piecework, which requires timing the production of each unit or each service. So that, for instance, if 4 units or 4 deliverables take an hour to do at a moderate to expert pace, and you're paying $24 an hour, then $6 per service unit or product use is an efficient and tested allocation for labor. The point here is never guess. Take the time to calculate. How efficiently can you source materials? Maybe you can invest in buying them in bulk, often by container, which will see a better price and less cost per unit spent on shipping. Are there key services you can offer to consumers who buy your products? Are there services you can upsell that add value and the reason consumers choose your products over the competition's? Maybe you 100% guarantee your products, cutting the risk for your consumers to buy. For many products, 100% guarantee is completely easy to do. It's absolutely doable, so why not do it? And of course, there are other marketing considerations to be determined. Your industry, your niche, your brand, and the value proposition that defines and sets apart your business model's products and services. Let's talk again about how this plays out in real life. And back to Morgan's fractional CMO consultancy and $450 in an hourly price. In case you're wondering how Morgan quotes on work, like how does she do that? You know, just $450 an hour. Her business quotes on deliverables. The hourly rate is a background that she knows equals the time and resource commitment that deliverable will require. As a service provider, you may be doing B2B like Morgan. Hence, your work, your service or your product is the wheel and a cog of an overall plan your client has. So for $9,000, for instance, Morgan's company creates a deliverable that will earn her clients many, many times that investment over the lifetime of that client's business. Notwithstanding the business success, how does Morgan determine a roadmap to ensure annual financial success? Okay, now here I'm going to throw a lot of numbers at you, but it is so important. If you want to create a matrix or a roadmap, you want to start to parcel off something as a pacing mechanism. Morgan knows that allocating 960 hours a year, remember they've dedicated 48 weeks, they're going to take a month off, and 20 hours on those 48 weeks to work directly with clients. And if the average client coincidentally takes 20 hours or a week between onboarding and end of project review in earning or billable time, there is the availability to book 48 clients in her annual calendar. Now that's amazing. Now she knows what to chase. So again, the math is 960 hours is her time constraint to work with clients in a year, and knowing that it's 20 hours on average per client. So that's 48 clients a year. Now, Morgan knows exactly what her annual client target is, knowing what to chase when she budgets on her own marketing, when attending networking events, and when scheduling prospective client discovery calls is an integral advantage in allocating the time in her business profitably. How to create a roadmap for success. The easiest way to do this for yourself, as Morgan has, is with an annual calendar. Begin penciling in the clients you have and what time frames, and see what a month or 2 or 6 or 9 down the road looks like in terms of filling your annual sales funnel with existing, prospective, and future clients. What if someone contracts you for 2 months at 10 hours per week? What will that look like? Plot it. How will you work in other clients within the same time frame? Plot it. Similarly for production schedule. What orders do you have, and in what time frames do you need to deliver them by? Now build out the other weeks and months and calculate the number of buyers you need to fill that funnel to meet your sales and top line revenue requirements. Okay, so I'm not gonna lie. There's a lot of logistics to work out. But the key thing that you now know is what you need to recover for every hour spent with clients or producing a unit. That is a powerful piece of knowledge. Now, how many you need to chase to meet your annual target? Map it out. Knowing how to fill in the profitability blanks is your first step to attaining them. In addition, I'm just going to throw this in there because I'm a big believer of visioning on a whiteboard. Regularly articulate your visioning for the business or your targets. You know, maybe you need 48 clients to run profitably, and you've got 24 more to go. Let everybody know that. That's your target. That's your vision. It's a very powerful and lucrative exercise. Okay, that was a lot of information. And I'm going to throw one more chunk of information at you, because for me, this all can be for naught if you don't know how to work with your accountant. I really hope this work and the work that you do to continue on determining the pricing and the best price for your business teaches you how to direct rather than depend on your accountant. If you don't have an accountant, or you have one you're not happy with, search for one you like. Search for them like they're going to be your CFO, like they're going to be the most valuable employee. Interview at least 3, please. Interview at least 3. Trust me when I tell you, this process will teach you so much. Interview 6 and it will teach you that much more. Remember, whoever does your books needs to be a certified professional who will treat your business with the same commitment and respect they do their own. Make sure to let them know your expectations, that you are very concerned that your pricing is meeting your expense and profit demands. You are paying them good money. So make sure you're getting good quality information from them. If you're not, 100% move on. It's not like your hairdresser. It's not even like your friend. If they're not delivering, move on. Get an accountant who will deliver the information you need to keep your business profitable. Accountants are busy people and have learned long ago the value of time. If you don't let them know what you expect from them, they simply will organize your numbers as they do and move on to their next client. But you know that your numbers represent hard-earned money and very specific details. Keep your eye on those details month in and month out with the help of your accountant. And always, always ensure pricing is recovering your salary, the business's overhead, and your budgeted profit. It's not just the inputs. If not, adjust the inputs whenever and wherever possible, but don't sacrifice profit. Lastly, know that by virtue of having an accountant is not a safety default for your business's profitability. I'm just going to repeat that. by virtue of just having an accountant. It's not a safety default for your business's profitability. You need to be able to converse and glean good information with and from them to ensure that you're pricing for profit. Thank you. I look forward to your questions.
Awesome, Katie. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Profit. What a word. And I love the models that you all shared. So thank you so much. For everybody still on, the slides will be shared out with everybody. So don't worry, you'll get all of those materials. Before we get started, I'm going to jump into a quick poll to just let us know what's keeping you up at night. This poll helps us provide additional programs around various topic areas for you, the entrepreneurs. A couple months ago, you asked us for finance and pricing in particular, and that's why Katie's here today. So thank you for participating in this poll. Hopefully we can help your sleep cycle. All jokes aside, we hope that we can provide programs with lots and lots of good things for you all. All right, so I'm going to end that share this results. Looks like finance is still at the top of the key, but sales, marketing, scale, pivot, team. So a little bit across the board, but appreciate everybody. We'll get right on that and hope to provide some programs more around those areas. So we've got some great questions. So I'm just going to start at the top of the list. What's your advice about leasing a vehicle for your business?
Very common question. I don't want to say biased, and maybe it's just me. I have 3 daughters. I'm in favor of leasing for a number of reasons. It really can lessen, you can purchase a maintenance package. It could really lessen the anxiety and aggravation of owning a vehicle. So for that reason, I really do like leasing. Every 4 years or whatever, you get another one. It's a good solid line item in your business's overhead. It's a tax deduction. I know you can do it. You know, my husband would never lease. Okay, never. He finance, pays them off, owns them for 10 years, and that's fine too. But so there's, you know, it's kind of almost a personal preference. But I think given the accounting world, at least in Canada, they're really a phrase 6 of one, half a dozen of another. Whether you lease or finance, the tax deduction can, and you know, owning has other implications in terms of deductions. So I know that wasn't a clear answer, but it's a solid option, and for me, much prefer to lease.
Great. Great questions. Keep them coming in, y'all. Let's see. When you write off your home for business expenses, doesn't that impact you when you sell your home? Should the business be paying us rent instead?
Okay. Yes, that's an amazing, I love that. There's so much in there. And I know that you have great sponsors, accounting sponsors here. And that is an amazing question to default to your accountant. So I know for myself, and I know for Canada, because it's the Canada Revenue Service, which is different than the IRS. There's aspects, but if it's your principal home, then it's fair. You don't have to. There are a lot of good nuances there. It's an excellent question, and dig a little deeper, pull the threads of that. Don't just park it. Don't just say, you know what, it's too complicated. I'm gonna have to rent to myself and then this and that. Go down the road, because there's money there to be had for you and your business. So.
Great. Let's see here. We got a SaaS person asking, we spent a year at least building a software platform on our own nickel. So let's say it cost us $300K in sunk cost to build. How do we factor that sunk cost into our prices for our clients?
Yes. Very good question. So you could amortize it. So you could divide that sunk cost over the first generation of that SaaS, let's say. So you're going to produce, I'm not sure how many units, and you're going to say, okay, we have sunk costs. that I think is going to set. I am a CMA, which is a management accountant. So my tax prowess is I don't do tax. I do coaching on, pricing. But I think you could amortize that over the first generation of maybe your products or maybe beyond. So maybe you're making 1 million products, you divide that by $300,000 in sunk costs, and then that's an incremental addition to recover that.
Mm-hmm. And full disclosure, I am not an accountant, so I'm not able to give financial advice. But I believe in the States there's an R&D tax credit that I would take a look at if that cost went into developing the product. But again, do your own research.
Exactly. Thanks, Colin. No, it's a very good point. Very good.
Great. All right. What would be the best pricing model to use for non-physical product online, like telecom airtime?
Yeah, and before I kind of spitballed an answer, I would like to do a little comparative research. It's not an area I've done a lot of work in, and I know pricing things like that seems really nebulous. One thing I think you saw from this presentation is a lot of reverse engineering. Plot the things you know, the expenses you have, the time allocation, the profit margin, and reverse engineer. So my instinct with that question is that I would like to talk a little bit more about that, and kind of what do you what is the model that's out there? What are you looking at? How does that fit your niche, your brand? And I know that's not a financial, but I would always base it on your financials and look at what's the return. Where's this investment? Like you say, the R&D, the sunk cost, and how can we amortize that over a future life of the platform?
Great. Another question from a fellow consultant out there. They want some advice around the language for the value, outcome, and deliverable language. Like peers they're about to, or they want to know how to go from hourly to a better structure.
Yeah, there is a whole art. There are people who can coach you on that. And some of the coaching, I think, is a lot of confidence building and articulation, and which is all good. I think really what you want to do is really run a bunch of numbers and kind of using your clients as test, and as you charge them, use them as tests, and how much is the usual and what's an efficient use of time, and then package things. I feel like people think like, if you say, I'm going to charge you this much an hour, that, it's almost like they got to keep track of how long you're on the clock. But if you promise a deliverable for a chunk of change and you deliver that, it's just much more palatable, I think. For your
and using your model too, you can help break down why the
exactly
number is what it is. Let's see another question here. Is it okay to use tax franchises provider for taxes in the beginning if your budget doesn't allow for an actual accountant?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and that's fair. That's fair. I think if it's not an instinct to keep your eye or your finger on the pulse of your expenses, having a qualified, certified bookkeeper and working with them is a great way to make sure this is your hard-earned time and money. This is your family, your life. This is your retirement and vacation. So I just encourage you, however makes sense. If you can keep track of them, all the power to you. All the power to you. That's fair, I think.
Yeah. Let's see. Aren't vehicle expenses supposed to be an either or situation, mileage or actual expenses?
I don't. I haven't seen that in a, but maybe. I think either or. I'm not sure. I might maybe missing kind of some of the.
Yeah, maybe our anonymous attendee can give us some extra color to that question.
I mean, usually in Canada, so there's a federal and provincial mileage rate, which is much higher than the cost of here a liter of gas or, a tank. And it incorporates those two. So you can tell your clients, I'm using the state rate so if you're traveling for a client, you can use that one rate.
Awesome. Let's see. How does one calculate the depreciation of a fixed assets, like equipment for tax purposes? And I think we're getting into tax land.
Yeah.
A little.
Yeah. So there are a lot of nuances. As you know, your asset sits on your balance sheet and its useful life will be amortized into your business as depreciation expense. So again, maybe you don't hire a full-time accountant or whatever, but you can spend some time learning those metrics. So important. Depreciation is very, very important. It's a great write-off, and it keeps your eye on sort of when you need to renew that piece of equipment and what kind of investment, which you'll use your profit, you'll need to make to purchase it.
Yeah, and a piece of advice I heard from somebody much smarter than me in the tax and finance realm was pay a little bit of money now to save a lot of pain later.
I think that's a good principle to live by.
Yeah.
I did see one question come up: should e-commerce and in-store prices be the same? And I would say yes. So I have a daughter who makes products. She sells them online. So she sells as a business to B2C, to customers. But if she switches to a combination of wholesaling, she'll want to make sure what she's selling them for on her website, and she is not either selling for more or less, that those prices are aligned.
That's great advice. Let's see. Ooh, good question. I have two businesses. Should I hire two separate accountants to ensure that I keep books clean and reduce human error?
If your initial accountant in one business can't work at the other, then maybe get another accountant who can do both. I'm not being, I'm trying to be rude. They should easily be able to do both.
No, yeah. I think that's
now, you might have a bookkeeper. You might hire a fractional bookkeeper who really does most of the inputs and reflections with you over month to month. You may just meet your accountant once a year. But I would, they are up to date on all the latest taxes. They see a lot of trends. Really pick their brains.
Another question here on, I get confused between paying myself a small salary and wanting to keep money in the business. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, so that's fair. And I think going back in this, once you get the presentation, you can read it again and it'll sort it out. You just, a separate budget for each. If you're saying that you're going to be able to pay yourself, I'm not sure how much an hour. Maybe if you're going to pay yourself $50 an hour, maybe you say, okay, I'm going to pull 55 from the business, and 5 is going to be put aside in profit, and the other is going to help me pay my groceries and all my other personal bills.
And it looks like we got a follow-up question for that one. Somebody said, I have two businesses as well. One is a nonprofit, and the for-profit pays for some of the expenses of the nonprofit. Should I pay my business back from the nonprofit?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, unless you want to, let's see, I know in Canada, there's such a thing as a B Corp, or in which case you put so much of your business into a social, good. But I think if they're two separate entities, yes, try to keep them as clean as possible. And just as a hack, like if you're going to lend your nonprofit money from your business, make it like clear chunks and maybe even distinct, like so that you always know, oh yeah, I gave it $28.50 this month, and last month was $28.50, and then put that just that figure will always kind of like, oh yeah, okay, right, that's what I gave that bit my nonprofit, and then I paid it back. Little hacks like that.
Yeah. How do you feel about value-based pricing, such as retainers? How much should a monthly retainer be for legal
Yeah, for
operations?
sure. Oh my goodness, if you can get a retainer, amazing. Yeah, for sure. Just obviously you're going to deliver on value. Um, Lots of templates online. Just kind of look in discussion groups or whatever, or in a lot of my entrepreneurs are in mastermind groups, and they learn, and they teach me so much about other aspects other than pricing. But I like the idea of a retainer if you can get it, if that's the way you want to set up your business. I mean, lawyers do it all the time. Why don't you?
Yeah, I think they were asking how
Oh,
much should the retainer be for the lawyer, but yeah, I don't know. I think that
oh,
depends.
for the lawyer?
Yeah.
Gosh, I've paid, like, I don't know if the bill was gonna, they quoted me, and you know what? I asked a lawyer, like, how much are you gonna charge me? I want to know. I need to budget this. And they, I think the retainer was like a third or half. I mean, lawyers, yeah, they know how to price.
All right, let's see. We're almost at time, folks, but these are great questions. Let's see. This one might be a little bit taxi, but I'm still going to put it out there because I think you might have something to
Okay.
say about it. If you're an S corp paying yourself on a W-2, can you still write off the personal and vehicle expenses you mentioned in the beginning?
Wait, say that again?
If you're an S corp paying yourself on a W-2, can you write off the personal and vehicle expenses you mentioned in the beginning?
Oh dear. I think there's some nuances there. I honestly don't know what a W-2 is. Again, more familiar with Canadian tax. But you know what? These are great questions. Maybe KPMG will do like a kind of pricing tax thing as your sponsor.
Considering all of these questions, that's going to be
Yeah,
the
these are,
email
I mean,
I'm
they're amazing
sending.
questions.
So all great questions.
Yeah.
Well, Katie, we're at time. So thank you so much for joining us today, for sharing your insights and expertise and experience. And for those of you still with us online, we'd appreciate your feedback, and we'd look forward to seeing you all online soon. Hope you all have a great, profitable rest of the week.
Thank you so much. It's been my pleasure.
Thank you, Katie, and we'll see you all soon.